All right, so in this video, I want to show you how to work with images. So images are one of these things that everybody wants to put in their apps, maybe some cool photos that they have. It also is a way for us to put iconography and various SVGs, if you will, that might indicate certain things, and we need to be able to work with images. So let's get started. So what I've done here is I've, again, just started up a basic Hello World program. Let's get this to resume so that this is up to date. And let me give you a couple of new pointers that you haven't probably seen yet on how we can add components into our app. And in this case, we're going to pick image because that's what we're talking about. So over here, instead of me just starting to type out like rectangle, like I've done before, like where did you get rectangle from? We can actually find out all of the different types of things that we can put into our app from a UI element perspective. And we do that by coming up here and clicking on this little plus library button. When we do that, we're going to get a display here. I don't know where you'll be set up, but the one you want is right here on the left. And this button is going to show you all the different views that you have available to you and all the different layout constructs that you have available to you. So what's great about this is if you don't want to just write the code immediately and because you don't know, this is another way to find all the different types of things that you can put in your app. So for example, here, I want to use an image. So rather than sort of search through this, I can just type image and it will filter down to something that has image in the name, which is image. And so I will take this and drag it. So what I want you to see here is, here's our code right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this image and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put it either above or below or left or right of Hello World. So why don't I put it above, and I'm going to drag it there and let up. So what I was doing was holding down the left mouse button while I dragged that component over. When I got it to where I wanted it, I let up on it. And notice what it did over here. It actually put it in a VStack for me because now I have two components here. And remember, just like files and folders, we can't have just multiple files flat. They would have to be in a folder. So in this VStack, which only returns one view to this body, we've got the image and text. So we've got both of them in a VStack, and that's what we want. Now, it turns out that this image right here is referencing a name, and that name, image name, doesn't reference any image in our project right now. So therefore, we don't see any image over here because the name is not being resolved. And if I click on text, I do see, that's still valid, and I have the blue box when I click on that. So what we want to do is we want to get a valid image in here so we can work with it. So one of the ways that I like to do this is you can use a website, and let me put this website up. So this website is called Unsplash.com, and what's great about it is it allows you to grab a whole slew of different images that are all free to use. So there's no copyright responsibilities for them, and so you're just free to use them in your app. So let's suppose that I wanted to pick something like, I particularly like this one from NASA, since I'm kind of a space guy. So I'm going to click on the down arrow here, and I'm going to put that into my downloads folder. So what I want to do is put that into my app. So here's how we're going to do this. Let's go back to this, and I'm going to just get out of full screen mode here for a second, and I've got to bring up my Finder that shows that, and then I'm going to go over here to Assets, and in the Assets directory is where I will have all my images. So you'll already have app icon set up where you can drop images in for the icon for your app. Don't worry about that until we get to much later in the course. But here's where we can drop all the different assets that we want, basically images. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to take that image and I'm going to drag it and drop it here. And now I have that image in my assets directory. And I don't really care for a name that long. I don't want to have to remember that. So I could just hit enter and then I can say NASA. That's nice and short, and it uniquely still identifies this. And the other thing I want to do is just tell, if I click over here on the upper right, I can get this bar out here that actually shows me all the attributes associated with whatever file I have selected. Since I have this NASA file selected, I can go over here and go down to scales, and I want to tell it it's single scale, which all that does is saying it's universal, which means it applies to all the different size iPhones that we have. So that's all we really needed to do to set up the image. So if I go back to the content view here, and let's go back to full screen, and we'll go ahead and take this out. We'll go ahead and click resume. So we want to get that green preview. So we want to go here and now just change this to a valid name, which we said was NASA. So if I type in NASA here, boom, all of a sudden we get the image. Now that image looks really big and really sort of like we've zoomed in on it. And that's because image sizes by default are always going to be the actual size of the image, and they're not resizable by default. So this image is a really big image. I don't know if you noticed, but it was over 4.5 megabytes, which is really large. And what we want to do is we want to sort of gain control of this by sizing it down so that it fits properly on the iPhone. So there's a couple ways we can do that. One is using the Resizable modifier. And because I've been developing in Swift UI for a while, and you will as you go through the course, you're just going to know that's the modifier to use. But I want to show you, if you don't, how you can find it. So again, you can click on image with the command and click, and then come down here to show Swift UI inspector. And this will give you some common modifiers that you can do. And those will be different depending on the Swift component you're doing. But I'm going to come down here to adding a modifier, and I know it's size related. So as I type SIZ, I come down to two different things. Now, fixed size isn't what I'm looking for, although I could use that. I really want it to just make it resizable. So I'm going to click on resizable, and look what it does. It adds that modifier onto the image and codes it for me, which is awesome. So now I can see. Now in the future, I'm probably not going to go through all that. I'll just, basically, this wouldn't be here. And I know, for example, that resizable is what I'm going to, so I'm going to hit enter, .resizable, and I now have a resized image. So what did it do over here now? So what it did is it resized the image to fit within the bounds of what it was given. So the parent said, well, you can have as much space as you want on the top. You just can't take up any more space than what I need for this text view below you. And so that's what it did. The image sized really tall and it's sized wide, but stays within the constraints of the iPhone. But that's really not, this looks warped, right? This is definitely, it's not keeping the same, what we refer to as the aspect ratio of the image. So what we're going to do is also add a modifier to have it keep the aspect ratio in what we call fit mode. So there's either fit or fill. So fill would take whichever's wider and fill it out. So you'd be cropping off some stuff. Fit says only size it enough that I can get the whole image into the size that I'm given. So again, we can come here to image. We can click on command, we can go to show UI inspector down here, and I know we talked about fit or fill. Let's try fit, and sure enough, there's a scaled to fit modifier. I can click on that, and now we have scaled to fit as a modifier that's been added, and notice that now we have a nice image basically placed right on the iPhone and sized properly, and it's not distorted. So that's an easy way to you drop images in, give them a nice name, reference them here, and you want to just remember these two modifiers, resizable and scaled to fit, and you're off to the races in using your images. Now, obviously, I could continue to go further with this. For example, I don't like the fact that it's right on the side. So what do we do for that? We do padding. So I could add padding onto there, and now it's going to bring it in so it's not right on the edges. Another thing we could do with this is maybe I want to make it even smaller, right? So I could come here and put the modifier. Now, when we actually size it to a particular frame, we're going to have to decide whether we're doing it after the padding or before. I'll say before, so I'll put it right here. Remember, order does matter with modifiers. And I can say frame, and I could say max width, let's say 200. And now our image has been sized down to something a little more down to this size. So it's 200 wide, and then it picks the height that it needs. So this is one way to do images. Now, another way to do images is to use what I refer to as SF symbols. Now, SF symbols are a whole catalog library of symbols that are built into iOS. And to show you this, we have an app on the Macs that everybody's using called SF symbol. And so let me just kill this so that you can see how to get it. So like I do everything, I do command space, SF space, there it is, SF symbols right at the top. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to bring up the app. Now, all this app is doing is showing me all the different symbols that I can put into my project. So for example, let's say I'm looking for a checkbox. I can type in check here, and then all of the things that have check in the name are going to show up here. So here's a checkmark dot circle, right? So let's use that. Let's say we want to use that in our design. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to take this image out, and I want to put that one in. So I can say image, but the difference here is instead of just supplying any name, I'm going to use the call that has the argument system name. So you see where it says I started typing system and it gives me system name for completion. So I hit enter, and now this is where I want to enter the name of that icon. So if I come back over here, again, it was check mark circle. So let's go over here and say check mark circle, and voila, we now have a circle here. Now, it's pretty small, so again, if we want to size it up, we first need to make it resizable, so we can say dot resizable. And now, of course, because it's resizable, it's trying to take up everything it can. So now we probably want to limit its size, but we also want to limit that aspect ratio so it's not squished like this. So let's do that. So if I type in fit, right here it completes scale to fit. Okay, so this is what we did before with the other image, but now we're doing it with this one. And then we could say dot frame, and maybe we do max width 50. And now we have an image of this circle check mark. And again, we can put this in H stacks, V stacks, move them around, size them, give them padding, do all sorts of things. But this is the way, a really easy way to work with images.